A desperate man abandons his son in the shadowy forest. Alone, the boy shouts for answers as darkness surrounds him. A park ranger hears the sounds and finds the lost child. But the appearance of a massive bear changes everything unexpectedly. The sun was setting behind the treetops in Yellowstone National Park, in the heart of Wyoming. Shadows lengthened across the dirt road, silent witnesses to a heartbreaking scene that was about to unfold. Jack, a man in his 30s with a face weathered by worry and fatigue, stopped his old pickup truck at a secluded bend in the road. His hands trembled on the steering wheel as he looked in the rearview mirror, making sure no one had followed him. In the passenger seat, Ethan, his 5-year-old son, slept peacefully, oblivious to the torment consuming his father. With a deep sigh, Jack got out of the vehicle and walked around to the passenger door. He opened it carefully, contemplating for a moment his son's innocent face. Tears began to well up in his eyes, blurring his vision. "Forgive me, my boy," he whispered as he unbuckled the seatbelt and took Ethan in his arms. The child stirred slightly, but didn't wake up. Jack hugged him tightly, inhaling the scent of his hair, etching every detail of this last moment together in his memory. Then, with trembling steps, he ventured into the forest. He walked for several minutes, getting far enough from the road so that Ethan couldn't easily find his way out. Each step was agony, each second a battle against the instinct to turn around and flee with his son. But he knew he couldn't. The men he owed money to would stop at nothing, not even an innocent child. Finally, Jack stopped in a small clearing. With infinite care, he laid Ethan down on a bed of dry leaves. The boy stirred, his eyes beginning to open. "Dad?" Ethan mumbled, disoriented. Jack knelt beside his son, caressing his cheek. "Shh. Everything's okay, my love. I need you to be very brave, okay? Stay here and don't move. Someone will come to find you soon." Ethan, still drowsy, nodded without really understanding what was happening. Jack felt his heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. "I love you more than anything in this world, Ethan. Never forget that," he said, leaning down to place a kiss on his son's forehead. Then, gathering all his willpower, he stood up and began to walk away. "Dad? Where are you going?" Ethan's voice, now more awake and tinged with fear, reached him. Jack didn't dare look back. He knew that if he did, he wouldn't have the courage to continue. "I'll be back soon, my boy. Stay there." Ethan's cries calling for him echoed through the forest, each one like a dagger in Jack's heart. He quickened his pace, moving away as fast as he could, tears flowing freely down his face. Back in the clearing, Ethan stood up, looking around with growing panic. The trees, which had seemed welcoming before, now loomed threateningly around him. The shadows lengthened, and the sounds of the forest, previously a soft murmur, were amplified in his terrified ears. "Dad!" he shouted with all his might, his voice breaking into sobs. "Dad, don't leave me!" But no one answered. But the forest remained indifferent to his pain, the silence broken only by the occasional birdsong or the cracking of a branch. Ethan began to walk, stumbling over roots and stones, calling for his father between tears. He didn't understand why he had been left alone, why his dad had gone. Fear took hold of him with each step, the growing darkness feeding his childish terrors. Meanwhile, at the ranger station in the park, Nathan finished his evening round. At 40, he knew the park like the back of his hand. Every trail, every stream, every corner of the forest held a memory for him. But tonight, something felt different. An unease he couldn't explain gnawed at him from within. He decided to do one last check before retiring. He got into his Jeep and drove into the park's roads, his eyes alert for any anomaly. It was then that he heard them, distant screams, barely audible over the engine noise. Nathan stopped the vehicle, straining his ears. There it was again, the cry of a child. Without losing a second, Nathan plunged into the forest, guided by the sounds. His heart was pounding, adrenaline coursing through his veins. What was a child doing alone in the park at this hour? After several minutes of frantic searching, he saw him, a small figure huddled against the trunk of a tree, sobbing inconsolably. "Hey, little one," Nathan called softly, approaching cautiously so as not to frighten him further. "Are you okay? What's your name?" Ethan looked up, his eyes swollen from crying fixed on Nathan. For a moment it seemed he was going to run away, but then, perhaps recognizing the ranger uniform, he lunged towards him, clinging to his legs. My dad," He stammered between sobs. He left me here." Nathan knelt down, hugging the child tenderly. "It's okay. You're safe now. I'll take you to a safe place and we'll find your dad, okay?" As he carried Ethan back to his jeep, Nathan couldn't help but wonder what circumstances would have led a father to abandon his son in the middle of the forest. What he didn't know was that this night would mark the beginning of a story that would change his life forever, intertwining his fate with that of this lost child and with that of a bear named Thunder in an adventure full of danger, love, and redemption. Night had fallen completely over Yellowstone National Park when Nathan, with Ethan asleep in the passenger seat, was returning to the ranger station. The silence in the jeep was heavy, interrupted only by the occasional sobs of the exhausted child. Nathan couldn't stop thinking about the situation. In his 15 years as a ranger, he had seen it all, but never something like this. What kind of father would abandon his child in the middle of the forest? The question tormented him as he drove along the winding dirt road. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the beam of the headlights. Nathan instinctively hit the brakes, stopping the vehicle just in time. There in the middle of the road stood an imposing grizzly bear. "Thunder," Nathan whispered, instantly recognizing the animal he had rescued years ago. The bear, larger and more majestic than he remembered, stood motionless, staring fixedly at the jeep. Nathan held his breath, aware that any sudden movement could provoke a dangerous reaction. Ethan, awakened by the sudden stop, rubbed his sleepy eyes. "What's happening?" he asked in a trembling voice. "Shh, it's okay," Nathan responded quietly. "There's a bear on the road, don't move." But instead of being scared, Ethan's eyes opened wide with fascination. "Wow!" he exclaimed, pressing his small hand against the window. To Nathan's surprise, Thunder showed no signs of aggression. Instead, the bear tilted its head as if studying the occupants of the vehicle. Its eyes settled on Ethan, and for a moment, Nathan swore he saw a flash of recognition in them. Slowly, Thunder approached the jeep. Nathan tensed his hand on the gear shift, ready to reverse if necessary. But the bear simply sniffed the air around the vehicle, its eyes never leaving Ethan. "Hello, Mr. Bear," Ethan said softly, his earlier fear apparently forgotten. As if responding to the greeting, Thunder emitted a soft growl, nothing threatening, almost friendly. Nathan couldn't believe what he was seeing. In all his years in the park, he had never witnessed such behavior in a wild bear. After what seemed like an eternity, Thunder finally moved away from the road, retreating into the thickness of the forest. Nathan let out the breath he didn't know he was holding. "Did the bear go away?" Ethan asked, his voice mixed with disappointment and relief. "Yes, little one," Nathan responded, still stunned by what had happened. "He's gone." They resumed their journey to the station, but Nathan's mind was buzzing. Thunder's behavior had been extraordinary. Could it be that the bear had sensed something in Ethan, some inexplicable connection? Upon arriving at the station, Nathan took Ethan inside. The place was cozy, with wooden walls and a fireplace that would soon be lit to combat the cold of the night. "All right, Ethan," said Nathan, sitting across from the child at the kitchen table. "I need you to tell me everything you can about how you got to the forest. Do you remember anything?" Ethan, hugging a mug of hot chocolate that Nathan had prepared for him, nodded slowly. "My dad. He took me to the forest. He said I had to be brave and wait, that someone would come to find me." Nathan frowned. "Did he tell you why he was leaving you there?" Ethan shook his head, tears forming in his eyes. "He just said he loved me and that he'd be back soon, but he didn't come back." Nathan's heart clenched at the obvious pain in the child's voice. "Don't worry, Ethan. We're going to find your dad and figure out what happened. For now, you're safe here with me." As Ethan finally gave in to exhaustion and fell asleep on the couch, Nathan headed to his office. He had to report the incident and start the search for Ethan's father. However, before doing so, he decided to check the park's security cameras. Rewinding the recordings, Nathan looked for any sign of a vehicle entering the park in the last few hours. Finally, he found it. An old pickup truck entering through one of the less traveled roads. Nathan watched closely as the vehicle stopped and a man got out with a child in his arms. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized Ethan. He saw how the man, presumably Ethan's father, went into the forest and returned alone minutes later, visibly affected. "What the hell is going on here?" Nathan muttered to himself. Just as he was about to turn off the monitor, something else caught his attention. In one of the more distant cameras, he saw Thunder, the bear, following the same path that Ethan's father had taken. It was as if the animal had been watching, protecting. Nathan leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed by the implications of what he had just seen. It was clear that there was much more to this story than met the eye. A desperate father, an abandoned child, and a bear that seemed more guardian than threat. As he looked towards the couch where Ethan slept peacefully, Nathan made a decision. He would do everything possible to uncover the truth behind this mystery and protect that child no matter what it cost. What Nathan didn't know was that this night was just the beginning of a series of events that would test his courage, his compassion, and his understanding of the natural world he loved so much. Fate had intertwined their paths, Nathan, Ethan, and Thunder, in a story that would challenge the boundaries between man and nature. Dawn broke over Yellowstone National Park, bathing the trees in golden light and awakening the wildlife. At the ranger station, Nathan was already up preparing breakfast while his mind replayed the events of the previous night. Ethan was still asleep on the couch, his small body curled up under a blanket. Nathan observed him for a moment, feeling a mixture of concern and a strange sense of responsibility towards the child. "Good morning," Ethan mumbled, rubbing his eyes and sitting up slowly. Nathan approached with a warm smile. "Good morning, champ. How are you feeling?" "I'm hungry," Ethan replied, looking around curiously. For a moment he seemed to forget where he was, but then reality hit him. "My dad..." Nathan sat next to him, putting a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We still don't know anything about him, Ethan. But don't worry, we're doing everything we can to find him." After breakfast, Nathan decided it would be best to take Ethan for a walk in the park. He thought the fresh air and natural beauty might help lift the boy's spirits. As they walked along a trail, Nathan noticed that Ethan seemed more relaxed, even excited by the sounds and sights of the forest. "Do you like animals, Ethan?" Nathan asked. The boy's eyes lit up. "Yes, I love them. Dad used to take me to the zoo before we had to leave home." Nathan made a mental note of this information. "And what's your favorite animal?" "Bears!" Ethan exclaimed enthusiastically. "They're big and strong, but they can also be soft and cuddly." Nathan couldn't help but smile, remembering the encounter from the previous night with Thunder. "You know, we have a very special bear here in the park." "The one we saw last night?" Ethan asked, his eyes shining with excitement. "Exactly," Nathan nodded. "His name is Thunder. I rescued him years ago when he was just a cub." As they walked, Nathan told Ethan the story of how he had found Thunder, orphaned and injured, and how he had cared for him until he could fend for himself in the wild. "And now he lives alone in the forest?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with sadness. "That's right," Nathan replied, "but he's in his home, free and—" He broke off as he saw that Ethan had stopped abruptly, staring fixedly at a nearby clearing. There, about 50 yards away, was Thunder. The huge bear was watching them calmly, showing no signs of aggression. "It's him," Ethan whispered excitedly. Nathan instinctively put a protective hand on Ethan's shoulder, but the boy showed no fear at all. Instead, he took a step forward, as if he wanted to approach. "Wait, Ethan," Nathan warned. "Remember, he's a wild animal. We can't—" But before he could finish the sentence, Thunder began to advance towards them. Nathan held his breath, ready to grab Ethan and run if necessary. However, the bear's behavior was strangely calm, almost curious. When Thunder was about 30 feet away, he stopped. Ethan, to Nathan's amazement and terror, extended his small hand towards the bear. "Hello, Thunder," the boy said softly. "Don't be afraid. We're friends." What happened next left Nathan speechless. Thunder, the wild bear he had known for years, sat down on his hindquarters as if responding to Ethan's greeting. "Incredible," Nathan murmured, unable to believe what he was seeing. For several minutes, Ethan and Thunder looked at each other fixedly, as if they were communicating in a language only they understood. Finally, with a soft growl, Thunder turned and headed back into the forest. "He said goodbye," Ethan said with a smile. "He said he'll come back to see us." Nathan was stunned. "Ethan, how did you know he wouldn't hurt you?" The boy shrugged. "I don't know. I just felt it, as if I already knew him." Back at the station, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about what he had witnessed. The connection between Ethan and Thunder was something that defied all logic, but he couldn't deny it. As he prepared lunch, Nathan received a call. It was from the local police, informing him that they had found Jack's abandoned pickup truck near the park boundaries. "Did they find my dad?" Ethan asked, noticing Nathan's serious expression. Nathan knelt in front of the boy. "Not yet, Ethan. But they're looking for him. Meanwhile, you'll stay here with me, okay?" Ethan nodded, a mixture of sadness and resignation in his eyes. "Do you think Thunder will help us find him?" The question took Nathan by surprise. "I don't know, little one. But what I do know is that for some reason that bear seems to want to protect you. And so will I." That night, as Ethan slept, Nathan stayed awake, reviewing maps of the park and trying to understand what could have led Jack to make such a desperate decision. What he didn't know was that the answers he sought would bring dangers that would test not only his dedication as a ranger, but also the strange bond that seemed to be forming between a lost boy, a solitary bear, and himself. The following days passed in an unusual routine for Nathan. In the mornings, he attended to his usual duties as a ranger, while Ethan followed him like a curious little shadow, asking questions about every plant and animal they saw. In the afternoons, they continued the search for Jack, Ethan's father, although so far without success. One afternoon, as Nathan was reviewing police reports in his office, Ethan was playing quietly on the floor with some toys that Nathan had gotten for him. Suddenly, the boy looked up. "Nathan?" Ethan said with a seriousness unusual for his age. "Do you think my dad loves me?" The question hit Nathan like a punch to the stomach. He knelt beside the child, carefully choosing his words. "Ethan, I'm sure your dad loves you very much. Sometimes adults do things we don't understand, but that doesn't mean they don't love us." Ethan nodded slowly, processing the information. "It's just, before coming here, I heard Dad talking on the phone. He seemed scared. He said something about money and bad people." This new information made Nathan tense up. His suspicions about Jack's situation seemed to be confirmed. "Ethan, do you remember anything else your dad said?" The boy frowned, struggling to remember. "He mentioned a name. I think it was the Wolf." It sounded like he was afraid of him. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that name. The Wolf was the nickname of a notorious loan shark and criminal in the region. If Jack was involved with him, the situation was much more dangerous than he had imagined. Just then, the station phone rang, startling them both. Nathan answered, listening with growing attention. When he hung up, his expression was grave. "Ethan," he said softly, "I've just been informed that your dad has been seen near the northern boundaries of the park. I'm going to go look for him. I need you to stay here with Sarah, my assistant. Can you do that for me?" Ethan nodded, although his eyes filled with tears. "Are you going to bring my dad back?" Nathan hugged the boy. "I'll do everything I can, I promise." After leaving Ethan in Sarah's care, Nathan ventured into the forest. The sun was beginning to set, tinting the sky in orange and red hues. As he delved deeper into the wilderness, a feeling of unease grew in his chest. After an hour of searching, Nathan heard voices in the distance. He approached cautiously, crouching behind some bushes. In a small clearing, he saw Jack, Ethan's father, surrounded by 3 menacing-looking men. "We gave you enough time, Jack," growled one of the men, presumably the Wolf. "Where's the money?" Jack, visibly terrified, stammered. "Please, I just need a little more time. My son—" "Your son is no longer your problem," interrupted the Wolf. "We'll take care of him after we're done with you." Nathan's heart was racing. He was about to intervene when a deafening roar echoed through the forest. From among the trees emerged Thunder, the enormous grizzly bear, charging directly at the group. Chaos ensued. The men, taken by surprise, drew their weapons, but panic made them miss their shots. Jack took advantage of the confusion to escape, running in Nathan's direction. "Over here!" shouted Nathan, revealing his position and guiding Jack to safety. As they ran back towards the station, Nathan couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Thunder, the bear that had been acting so strangely since Ethan's arrival, had just saved their lives. Back at the safety of the station, Jack collapsed, sobbing. "My son. Where's Ethan? Is he safe?" "He's here," Nathan replied, his voice mixed with relief and reproach. "He's been with me since you abandoned him in the forest. Jack looked up, his eyes full of shame and gratitude. I had no choice. Those men, they threatened me. I thought if I left Ethan here, he would be safe until I could sort everything out. Nathan was about to respond when Ethan appeared in the doorway, his eyes widening at the sight of his father. "Dad!" Father and son melted into an embrace, tears running down their cheeks. Nathan observed the scene with a mixture of emotions. He knew that the threat of the wolf and his men was still present, and that Thunder's strange intervention raised more questions than answers. As night fell over the park, Nathan realized that this was only the beginning. The safety of Ethan and Jack, the mystery of Thunder, and the dangers lurking in the darkness of the forest, everything was intertwined in a story that was far from over. Looking out the window towards the dark forest, Nathan wondered what other secrets and dangers awaited in the shadows, and how he would protect this small family that had somehow become part of his life. The following morning dawned with a palpable tension at the ranger station. Nathan, who had barely slept, was preparing breakfast while Jack and Ethan slept in the guest room. Nathan's mind couldn't stop turning over the events of the previous night and the decisions that needed to be made. When Jack finally appeared in the kitchen, his face showed the weight of guilt and exhaustion. "Nathan, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for Ethan." Nathan offered him a cup of coffee. "I didn't do it just for you, Jack. I did it for Ethan. But I need you to explain exactly what kind of trouble you're in." Jack nodded, sitting heavily in a chair. "It all started a year ago. My business was in trouble and I urgently needed money. The wolf seemed like the only option. I thought I could pay back the loan quickly, but things only got worse." "And why didn't you go to the police?" Nathan asked. "They threatened Ethan," Jack replied, his voice breaking. "They said if I talked to anyone, they'd hurt him. I couldn't risk it." At that moment, Ethan entered the kitchen, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Seeing his father, he ran to hug him. Nathan observed the scene, feeling a mixture of compassion and concern. "Jack," Nathan said after a moment, "you can't stay here indefinitely. The wolf and his men are still out there, and now they know you're in the park." "I know," Jack replied, hugging Ethan tightly. "But I don't know where to go. We have no one else." Nathan was about to respond when a noise outside caught his attention. He looked out the window and what he saw left him breathless. Thunder, the bear, was standing in the clearing in front of the station, looking directly at the house. "It can't be," Nathan muttered. Ethan, curious, approached the window. His eyes lit up when he saw the bear. "It's Thunder, he's come to visit us." Before Nathan could stop him, Ethan had run to the door and out into the open. Jack, terrified, tried to follow him, but Nathan held him back. "Wait," Nathan said, his voice tense but firm. "Watch." Outside, Ethan was slowly approaching Thunder. The huge bear remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the child. When Ethan was just a few meters away, Thunder sat on his hindquarters as if greeting him. "Incredible," Jack whispered, watching the scene with a mixture of amazement and fear. Nathan slowly walked out of the house, approaching Ethan and Thunder. The bear looked at him, and for a moment, Nathan felt he could see intelligence and purpose in those dark eyes. "I think he wants us to follow him," Ethan said suddenly. Nathan looked at the boy, surprised. "How do you know?" Ethan shrugged. "I just know. It's like I can understand him." After a moment of doubt, Nathan made a decision. "Jack, stay here. Ethan and I will follow Thunder. I promise I'll keep him safe." Jack, although visibly nervous, nodded. He trusted Nathan, and something about the connection between Ethan and the bear reassured him in a way he couldn't explain. Nathan and Ethan followed Thunder through the forest for almost an hour. The bear guided them with clear purpose, occasionally stopping to make sure they were following. Finally, they reached an area of the park that Nathan didn't recognize. There, hidden among the vegetation, they found a small cave. Thunder stopped at the entrance, looking at Nathan and Ethan expectantly. "He wants us to go in," Ethan said. Cautiously, Nathan turned on his flashlight and entered the cave, holding Ethan's hand. What they found inside left them speechless. The cave was full of ancient petroglyphs, drawings carved into the rock showing scenes of humans and bears living in harmony. In the center of the cave, a circle of stones surrounded what appeared to be an ancient altar. "Nathan," Ethan whispered, his voice full of wonder, "I think this place is special. It's like Thunder wanted to show us something important." As they examined the petroglyphs, Nathan began to understand. The images told a story of an ancient tribe that lived in harmony with the bears of the region, considering them spiritual guardians. "This is incredible," Nathan murmured. "This cave could be proof of an ancestral connection between humans and bears in this region. It could change everything we know about the history of this place." Thunder watched them from the cave entrance, as if satisfied with having shared this secret with them. Suddenly, Nathan had an idea. "Ethan, I think Thunder has shown us this for a reason. If we can make this discovery known, we could get special protection for this part of the park." "And would that help us against the bad men?" Ethan asked, quickly understanding. Nathan nodded. "It could bring more attention and security to the area. And maybe, just maybe, it'll give us a way to protect you and your father." As they left the cave, with Thunder following them at a respectful distance, Nathan knew they had a new mission. They not only had to protect Ethan and Jack, but also preserve this incredible discovery and the special connection that seemed to exist between Ethan and Thunder. The path ahead was full of uncertainty, but for the first time since this strange adventure began, Nathan felt a spark of hope. With the help of a brave boy and an extraordinary bear, perhaps they could face any challenge that came their way. The days following were a whirlwind of activity at the ranger station. Nathan, determined to use the cave discovery to protect Ethan and Jack, immersed himself in a frenzy of phone calls and paperwork. Meanwhile, Jack and Ethan were adapting to their new temporary life in the park. Jack, still fearful of the Wolf's men, rarely ventured outside the station. Ethan, on the other hand, was flourishing in this new environment, spending hours exploring the surroundings under the watchful eye of Nathan and, surprisingly, Thunder. One morning, as Nathan was reviewing some documents in the kitchen, Ethan came running in, his eyes bright with excitement. "Nathan! Thunder's outside again," the boy exclaimed. Nathan quickly got up, following Ethan to the window. Indeed, the imposing bear was standing in the clearing in front of the station, as if he was mounting guard. "It's incredible how he stayed close," Nathan murmured. "It's almost as if he knows we need protection." Jack, who had joined them at the window, nodded with a mixture of awe and concern. "I've never seen anything like it." "Do you think it's safe for Ethan to be so close to him?" Nathan thought for a moment before responding. "Honestly, Jack, under normal circumstances, I'd say no, but there's something special about the connection between Ethan and Thunder. And after what we saw in that cave, I think we can trust him." Just then the phone rang. Nathan answered, his face lighting up as he listened. When he hung up, he turned to Jack and Ethan with a smile. "Good news," he announced. "The National Park Service is interested in our discovery. They're going to send a team of archaeologists and biologists to investigate the cave and the surrounding area." "Does that mean we'll be safe?" Ethan asked hopefully. Nathan knelt in front of the child. "It's a step in the right direction, Ethan. With more people and attention in the park, it'll be harder for the bad men to approach without being noticed." Jack, however, didn't seem convinced. "But the wolf isn't someone who gives up easily. What will happen when he finds out about this?" Jack's question hung in the air, reminding them all that the danger had not yet passed. Nathan took a deep breath. "You're right, Jack. We can't let our guard down, but I have a plan." The next few days were a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The team of researchers arrived, filling the park with activity. Research tents were set up near the cave, and the sound of vehicles and voices broke the usual silence of the forest. Surprisingly, Thunder seemed to have disappeared since the arrival of the researchers. Ethan was visibly disappointed, but Nathan assured him that the bear was probably just being cautious with so many strangers around. One afternoon, while Nathan was supervising the work of the archaeologists in the cave, one of them called him excitedly. "Mr. Nathan, I think we've found something important." Nathan quickly approached. The archaeologist pointed to a series of symbols on the cave wall that had gone unnoticed before. These symbols, the archaeologist explained, seem to indicate some kind of ritual or ceremony. If we're interpreting correctly, it suggests that the ancient inhabitants of this region believed in a spiritual connection between certain children and the bears of the area. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. "Children like Ethan?" he asked quietly. The archaeologist nodded, excited. "Exactly. According to these inscriptions, these children were considered chosen ones, capable of communicating with the bears and acting as mediators between the human world and the natural world." Nathan's mind was spinning with this new information. Suddenly, the connection between Ethan and Thunder took on new meaning. It wasn't just a coincidence or unusual behavior of a bear. It was part of an ancestral tradition that dated back centuries. That night, as he shared the new discoveries with Jack and Ethan, Nathan noticed a change in the atmosphere. Jack seemed more thoughtful, less fearful, as if he was finally starting to believe that there was something bigger than their immediate problems. Ethan, for his part, listened with eyes bright with excitement. "Does that mean I'm special?" he asked. Nathan smiled, ruffling the boy's hair. "You've always been special, Ethan. This just confirms what we already knew." As they prepared for bed, Nathan couldn't help but feel they were on the brink of something important. The discovery in the cave, the presence of the researchers, Thunder's temporary absence, everything seemed to be converging towards a crucial point. What Nathan didn't know was that, in the darkness of the forest, other eyes were watching the activity in the park. The wolf and his men hadn't forgotten their debt, and the growing attention on the park had only increased their determination to resolve the matter once and for all. As night fell over the park, Nathan stayed awake, looking out the window into the dark forest. He knew that the coming days would bring challenges that would test not only his courage, but also the strength of the bond between Ethan, Thunder, and the ancient spirit of the land that seemed to have chosen them. Dawn brought with it an atmosphere of tension in Yellowstone National Park. Nathan woke up with a feeling of unease that he couldn't shake off. As he prepared breakfast for Ethan and Jack, he kept glancing out the window expecting to see Thunder, but the bear was still nowhere to be seen. "Do you think Thunder is okay?" Ethan asked, noticing the concern on Nathan's face. Nathan forced a smile. "I'm sure he is, Ethan. He's probably just giving space to the researchers to do their work." Jack, who had been unusually quiet over the past few days, suddenly spoke up. "Nathan, I've been thinking maybe we should leave. All this attention on the park. I'm worried it might attract the wolf and his men." Nathan sat down, looking at Jack seriously. "I understand your concern, Jack, but I think this is where we have the best chance of protecting you both. Besides, there's something bigger happening here, something that involves Ethan and Thunder. We can't just run away from that." Before Jack could respond, one of the researchers rushed into the station. "Mr. Nathan, you have to see this," he exclaimed, panting from the run. Nathan followed the researcher to the cave, with Ethan and Jack on his heels. Inside, the archaeologists had discovered a new chamber hidden behind a rock wall that had partially collapsed. "Look at this," said the lead archaeologist, pointing to a series of newly discovered cave paintings. The images showed scenes of a great battle, human figures and bears fighting side by side against what appeared to be invaders. At the center of it all, the figure of a child stood out, surrounded by a glowing aura, with a giant bear by his side. "According to our initial interpretations," the archaeologist explained, "this seems to represent an ancient prophecy. It speaks of a time of great danger, when the chosen child and the guardian bear would unite to protect the land and its people." Nathan felt his mouth go dry. He looked at Ethan, who was observing the paintings with a mixture of awe and recognition. "It's like I've seen this before," Ethan murmured, gently touching the image of the child on the wall. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed from outside the cave. Nathan ran towards the entrance, his heart pounding. There, in the clearing in front of the cave, was Thunder. But something was different. The bear seemed agitated, almost frantic. "Something's wrong," Ethan said, who had followed Nathan. "Thunder is trying to tell us something." As if confirming Ethan's words, Thunder rose on his hind legs and roared again, nodding his head towards the north of the park. Nathan needed no further signs. "Everyone, gather at the station now," he shouted to the researchers. "I think we have trouble." As they ran back to the station, Nathan saw a column of smoke rising in the distance. His heart sank. He knew what that meant. "The wolf!" Jack muttered, fear evident in his voice. Nathan acted quickly. He ordered the researchers to evacuate the area while he prepared to face the threat. "Jack, I need you to take Ethan and hide in the emergency bunker behind the station," Nathan said, handing him a map and a key. "What about you?" Ethan asked, his eyes full of concern. Nathan knelt in front of the boy. "I'm going to try to stop them, Ethan, but I need you to be safe. Promise me you'll stay with your dad, no matter what you hear." Ethan nodded, tears forming in his eyes. "Be careful, Nathan." As Jack and Ethan headed for the bunker, Nathan turned to Thunder. The bear was staring at him intently, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. "I know I can't ask you to fight," Nathan said softly. "But if you could keep an eye on Ethan and Jack." To his surprise, Thunder growled softly and headed towards the bunker, positioning himself near the hidden entrance. Nathan took his radio and tranquilizer rifle, the only armament he had available. He knew he was at a disadvantage, but he had to buy time until the reinforcements he had requested arrived. As he ventured into the forest to confront the wolf and his men, Nathan couldn't help but think about the prophecy they had just discovered. Was this what it was referring to? Was this the moment when the chosen child and the guardian bear would have to unite to protect the land? With the sound of vehicles approaching and the smell of smoke growing stronger, Nathan prepared for what would be the toughest battle of his life. But for the first time since this adventure began, he felt a strange calm. Whatever was about to happen, he knew he wasn't alone. He had Ethan, Thunder, and perhaps even the ancient spirits of the land on his side. The storm was about to break, and the fate of the park, Ethan and all of them, hung in the balance. The forest plunged into a tense silence as Nathan cautiously advanced between the trees. The smoke grew thicker as he approached the source of the fire, and the sound of vehicles and male voices became clearer. Suddenly, Nathan found himself face to face with the first group of the wolf's men. There were 3 of them, armed and dangerous looking. Nathan slowly raised his hands, his tranquilizer rifle hanging from his shoulder. "This is a protected national park," he said firmly. "You have no permission to be here, let alone start fires." The tallest of the men, with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "We're not here for nature, Ranger. We know you're hiding Jack and his brat. The wolf wants what belongs to him." Nathan kept his calm, though his heart was racing. "I don't know what you're talking about. There are only researchers and park staff here." The scarred man smiled maliciously. "You're a bad liar, Ranger, but it doesn't matter. We'll find them with or without your help." At that moment, a deafening roar echoed through the forest. The men startled, looking around nervously. "What the hell was that?" one of them asked. Nathan took advantage of the distraction to grab his tranquilizer rifle. In a quick move, he fired 2 darts, taking down 2 of the men before they could react. The third, the scarred one, managed to dodge the shot and lunged at Nathan. They both rolled on the ground, fighting fiercely. Nathan felt a blow to his jaw that left him stunned. When the man was about to hit him again, another huge figure appeared out of nowhere, ramming into the attacker. It was Thunder. The bear had left his post near the bunker to come to Nathan's aid. With a threatening roar, Thunder stood between Nathan and the scarred man, who now lay on the ground, terrified. "Thanks, friend," Nathan muttered, standing up with difficulty. But there was no time to rest. More voices were approaching. Nathan looked at Thunder. "I need you to go back to Ethan and Jack. Protect them." To his surprise, the bear seemed to understand. With one last look at Nathan, Thunder headed back into the forest, making his way back to the bunker. Nathan quickly tied up the unconscious men and prepared for the next encounter. He didn't have to wait long. Soon, he found himself surrounded by a larger group, led by a middle-aged man with a cold, calculating look. The wolf. "Ah, the brave Ranger," the wolf said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I must admit I'm impressed. You've caused more trouble than I expected." "This place is protected," Nathan replied, keeping his voice firm despite the fear he felt. "Not just by law, but by something older and more powerful. I suggest you leave before it's too late." The wolf laughed. "Older and more powerful? You mean that pet bear of yours? My men can easily take care of it." Just then, a strange sound filled the air. It was like a chant, low and rhythmic, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The wolf's men looked around, confused and increasingly nervous. Nathan recognized the voice. It was Ethan. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. From among the trees, not just Thunder, but dozens of bears emerged, surrounding the group. Behind them, wolves, mountain lions, and other forest creatures joined in, creating an impenetrable circle around the wolf and his men. And there, riding on Thunder, was Ethan. His eyes glowed with a supernatural light, and his voice, though young, resonated with an ancestral authority. "This land does not belong to you," Ethan said, his voice blending with the chant that still floated in the air. "You have brought violence and destruction to a sacred place. You must leave now or face the judgment of the forest guardians." The wolf, for the first time, looked truly scared. His men began to back away, some even dropping their weapons. This is impossible," the wolf muttered. Nathan stepped forward. "I gave you the chance to leave peacefully. Now you're in the hands of forces that even I don't fully understand." At that moment, the sound of sirens filled the air. The reinforcements Nathan had requested were finally arriving. The wolf, seeing that he was cornered by both the forces of nature and the law, finally surrendered. As the police began to arrest the wolf and his men, Nathan ran towards Ethan, who was now getting down from Thunder with Jack's help. "Is everyone okay?" Nathan asked, hugging them both. Ethan nodded, though he looked exhausted. "I heard the call of the forest, Nathan. I couldn't stay in the bunker. I knew I had to do something." Jack, with tears in his eyes, hugged his son. "I thought I would lose you, but now I see you're stronger than I ever imagined." As the situation calmed down, the animals began to retreat into the forest. Thunder, however, remained close, like a silent guardian. Nathan looked around, amazed at what he had just witnessed. The ancient prophecy had been fulfilled. The chosen child and the guardian bear had united the creatures of the forest to protect the land. But as the sun began to set over Yellowstone National Park, Nathan knew this wasn't the end of their adventure. It was just the beginning of a new era, one in which the ancient secrets of the forest and the special connection between Ethan and Thunder would play a fundamental role in protecting this sacred place. With the wolf out of the picture and the immediate danger neutralized, Nathan, Ethan, Jack, and Thunder prepared to face the new challenges and wonders that surely awaited them in the future. The days following the confrontation with the wolf were a whirlwind of activity in Yellowstone National Park. News of the extraordinary events spread quickly, attracting the attention of media, government authorities, and curious onlookers from all over the country. Nathan found himself at the center of a media hurricane, trying to protect Ethan and the park from unwanted attention. Authorities wanted answers about how a 5-year-old boy had managed to summon the animals of the forest, while scientists were eager to study the phenomenon. One morning, as Nathan was preparing breakfast, Ethan entered the kitchen with a serious expression on his childish face. "Nathan," the boy said, "I think we need to talk to them." "To everyone." Nathan knelt in front of Ethan, surprised by the maturity in his voice. "Are you sure, Ethan? You don't have to do anything you don't want to." Ethan nodded with determination. "The forest told me. It's time for people to understand." Jack, who had been listening from the doorway, approached and put a hand on his son's shoulder. "If that's what you feel you need to do, we'll support you." With the decision made, Nathan organized a press conference at the entrance to the park. Scientists, journalists, and government officials gathered, eager to hear the story firsthand. Ethan, with Thunder by his side and flanked by Nathan and Jack, stood before the crowd. Despite his young age, there was a calmness and wisdom in his eyes that made everyone fall silent. "My name is Ethan," the boy began, his voice clear and firm. "And this is my friend Thunder. Together, we are the guardians of this forest." As Ethan spoke, he told the story of the ancient prophecy, of the special connection between humans and nature, and how the forest had chosen them to protect it. Nathan and Jack added details when necessary, but it was Ethan who kept the audience captivated. "This place is special," Ethan continued, "not just because of the animals or the trees, but because of the ancient magic that lives here. We can't let it be lost or destroyed." When Ethan finished speaking, an astonished silence fell over the crowd. Then, slowly, the questions began. But they were different from what Nathan had feared. Instead of skepticism or disbelief, there was a sense of awe and respect. Scientists wanted to collaborate to better understand and protect the park. Government officials talked about increasing the protection and conservation status of the area. Journalists, moved by the story, promised to help raise awareness about the importance of preserving these sacred places. As the day progressed, Nathan realized they were on the threshold of something extraordinary. Ethan's revelation hadn't provoked fear or rejection, but a wave of support and a renewed respect for nature. That night, as Ethan slept exhausted from the day's events, Nathan and Jack sat on the porch of the station, contemplating the stars. "What do you think will happen now?" Jack asked. Nathan smiled. "Honestly, I don't know. But I think it's the beginning of something beautiful. Ethan has an incredible gift, and with the right support he could make a real difference in how people see and treat nature." Jack nodded, his face a mixture of pride and concern. "I never imagined my son would have such a great destiny. It scares me a little, to be honest." "It's natural to feel scared," Nathan replied. "But you're not alone in this. You have Thunder, you have the forest, and you have me. We'll take care of Ethan together." As they talked, Thunder emerged from the darkness of the forest, silently approaching the porch. The bear sat nearby, as if listening to the conversation. "You know," Nathan said, looking at Thunder, "I think he understands the importance of what's happening too. It's like we're all part of something bigger." Jack smiled, tentatively extending a hand towards Thunder. To his surprise, the bear moved closer, allowing Jack to gently pet him. "I never thought I'd say this," Jack murmured, "but I think I'm getting used to having a bear as my son's bodyguard." Both men laughed, the sound of their joy mixing with the night sounds of the forest. It was a moment of peace and hope, a respite before the challenges that would surely come. Because if one thing was clear, it was that the adventure of Ethan, Nathan, Jack, and Thunder was just beginning. With the world now aware of the secret of Yellowstone National Park, they would have to navigate uncharted waters, balancing the protection of the forest with the curiosity of the outside world. But for now, on that quiet night under the stars, with the forest vibrating with life around them and the future full of possibilities, everything seemed possible. 5 years had passed since that night when Ethan revealed to the world the secret of Yellowstone National Park. Time had brought significant changes, but the magical essence of the place remained intact. The park had become an internationally recognized sanctuary, a model of conservation and harmonious coexistence between humans and nature. Nathan, now the park's director, had worked tirelessly to implement protection programs and environmental education. Ethan, now 10 years old, had grown not only in stature, but also in wisdom. His connection with the forest and its inhabitants had strengthened with each passing year. Jack, for his part, had become a passionate defender of the park, working alongside Nathan in its administration. One sunny morning, Ethan emerged from the cabin he now shared with his father within the park. Thunder, faithful as ever, was waiting for him in the clearing. The bear, though older, remained an imposing and protective presence. "Good morning, Thunder," Ethan greeted, stroking the bear's fur. "Ready for our walk?" Together, the boy and the bear ventured into the forest, following a path only they knew. As they advanced, other animals silently joined their procession: wolves, mountain lions, birds of all species. It was a spectacle that never ceased to amaze those who witnessed it. They arrived at a clearing where Nathan and Jack were waiting for them, along with a group of special visitors, children from different parts of the world who had shown a special connection with nature. "Welcome to Yellowstone National Park," Ethan began, his voice calm but full of authority. "This is a sacred place, a bridge between the human world and the natural world. You're here because, like me, you have a special gift. You can hear the voice of the forest." The children listened attentively, their eyes shining with wonder and recognition. Nathan and Jack watched proudly as Ethan shared his knowledge and experience. "Each of you has the potential to be a guardian," Ethan continued. "Not just of this forest, but of all the natural places in your own homes. The earth needs us now, more than ever." As Ethan spoke, the forest seemed to come alive around them. The leaves rustled more forcefully, the birds sang in harmony, and a palpable energy filled the air. "What you're going to learn here," Ethan said, "is more than just communicating with animals or understanding plants. You're going to learn to be part of something bigger, to be guardians of life itself." As the session continued, Nathan approached Jack. "Who would have thought 5 years ago that we'd be here?" he murmured. Jack smiled, his eyes never leaving his son. "Certainly not me. But I wouldn't change anything we went through. Look at what Ethan has become, what this place has become." The day passed with Ethan guiding the young visitors through the forest, teaching them to listen to the whispers of the trees, to understand the signs of the animals, and to feel the ancient energy that flowed through the earth. At sunset, as the group returned to the main station, Nathan noticed something extraordinary. Each of the visiting children was accompanied by an animal from the forest. A wolf here, a deer there, even a small bear walking alongside a bright-eyed girl. "The circle is expanding," Ethan said, noticing Nathan's gaze. "The forest is choosing its new guardians." That night, as the moon rose over the park, Nathan, Jack, Ethan, and Thunder gathered on the cabin's porch. The air was filled with possibilities and hope. "What's next now?" Nathan asked, looking towards the forest he loved so much. Ethan smiled, absently stroking Thunder's fur. "We keep moving forward. We teach, we learn, we protect. The forest has entrusted us with its wisdom, and it's our duty to share it with the world." Jack nodded, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "And we'll do it together, as a family." As the night progressed, the sounds of the forest blended into a natural symphony. It was the sound of life, of hope, of a future where humans and nature could coexist in harmony. Nathan looked at Ethan, the boy who had changed their lives and the destiny of the park. He saw in him not just the small child he had found abandoned in the forest years ago, but the guardian he had become, the leader who was emerging. The legacy of the forest was safe in his hands, and in the hands of all those whom Ethan would inspire and teach. The adventure that had begun with an act of desperation had transformed into a mission of hope and renewal. As the stars shone in the night sky, Nathan knew with certainty that although this particular story was coming to an end, it was only the beginning of something much greater. The forest, Ethan, Thunder, and all who had been touched by the magic of Yellowstone National Park would continue to write new chapters in the great story of life. And so, under the protective mantle of the ancient trees and the glow of the eternal stars, the story of Ethan, the chosen child, and Thunder, the guardian bear, became legend. A legend that would inspire future generations to listen to, protect, and love the eternal voice of nature.